to go first, and then Dr. Christopher Gardner is going to go second. My first gripe is, these aren't made for women. I realize that I don't have a pants to put this on, so I'm going to put that on the list for next time. But one of the things I wanted to talk about today is why is it so hard to lose weight? And I know that you're here today, so this might resonate with you. I'm sure there's no one here saying it's so easy to lose weight, and I'm here to heckle you about it. So, but one of the things, I'm a physician and a researcher, and I see a lot of women for weight loss. And one of the things that comes up pretty frequently is that it just seems like I have problems losing weight. And my friend Sally, she can eat double what I eat, and she never seems to gain weight. But what I want to tell you is that it's hard for all of us in our current society to keep a normal weight. And let me give you some statistics. Now, I know it's hard to read the bars at the bottom, but you can appreciate this is a map of the United States. This is not the political change. It's the proportion of people who are obese. And you can appreciate from 1994, when we had complete information on all the states, to 2000, how dramatically the color has shifted. In 1994, there was no state where the prevalence of obesity was greater than 20%. No state. In 2010, there's no state that has a prevalence less than 20%. So it's pretty dramatic, right? All of us are getting heavier. And to give you exact statistics, about 2/3 of adults in the United States are either overweight or obese, and 1/3 are obese. What do I mean by that? One metric of body weight that you may have heard about is called the body mass index. Your doctors might have mentioned it to you. It's simply a calculation based on weight and your height. And the calculation is exactly weight in kilograms versus height in meters squared. Medically, we say that normal weight is less than 25. Overweight is 25 to 29.9, and obese is greater than 30. So the map before showed people with a body mass index of 30 or greater. In case you were curious, maybe not, I have height in feet and inches, and the weight it would take to qualify for the diagnosis of obesity. So if you're 5'2", 164 pounds and above would qualify you as being obese. Now, gaining weight in our current society is easy, and therefore it makes it very difficult to lose weight. So I sort of flip that on you. One of the things is we as humans are very good at storing calories. We were built that way. If you think about creating a human, you would never create them to expend a ton of energy and never be able to hold on to the calories, although it kind of sounds nice, but in reality, that's not practical. So we have a genetic predisposition to really use the calories that we take in. If you mix that with our current environment, which I'll call obesogenic, and these are terms that are frequently used, then you really have a society where the forces are for you to gain weight. One thing, since I started training, which was actually a fairly long time ago, there's been an explosion of information about genetics. I'm sure you've heard about Angelina Jolie getting a test for her genetics and the results of that. So people have been very interested in understanding what are the genetic factors controlling obesity. It seems that the obesity that we're all predisposed to is considered common obesity, and there are a lot of genes, not just one, but a lot of genes that control our weight. One thing that we have found out through science and studies of identical twins is that this BMI is very heritable. You can appreciate in families, mom and daughter have the same body habitus, but in identical twins, it's amazing how similar their body mass indexes are, even when they're reared apart. And to bring that home, in studies that they've done in other countries, over 600 identical twins, they could only find less than 3% that were discordant for BMI. So 3 units apart. So it's highly heritable, but we don't quite understand all the genetic variables. In current data today, there have been several genes that have been identified that can predispose you, I will say, to a higher BMI than someone who doesn't have that risk factor. This is about 32 genes that we know about that have been validated in lots of populations. I show you this because even the one at the very bottom, you can't read that, says FTO. It's the one that's been the strongest linked to body mass index, increasing your risk. And even that will maybe increase your BMI by 0.4 units. So it's pretty low. And in general, our current understanding is that even with all these genes, that this only explains 2 to 4% of your body mass index. So we still know a very little bit about the genetic forces affecting our weight. I will, however, tell you, each of us gets 2 copies of genes. So let's say for these 32 genes, there's a certain, if you have a certain variation, you're more likely to be heavier. So you can have potentially 64 genes that affect your BMI. If you look at a population, this was done in the Nurses' Health Study, you could have a score of 0 to 64, but you'll see that most people are kind of in the middle. And a lot of us have a lot of these risk genes. What I want to show you is that, the line seems to go up like that. So if you have more of these genes, you may be a little bit heavier than someone who has less of these genes. But again, the difference is maybe 2 unit points. So don't put too much emphasis on it. We have, a genetic predisposition. We know some of the genes, but it's not explaining the whole answer. Now, a lot of people feel that the explosion, the change in the proportion of people with obesity, it couldn't possibly be genetics because we've had our genetics for a long time, and it takes decades and decades to really change that. So what is working is our genetic predisposition that we've had mixed with our obesogenic environment. And this is modern society. I mean, you can all relate to this, taking the escalator to go work out. What that has amounted to, in addition to our food availability, is we are taking in more calories than we used to. If you take average population, we're taking in more calories than we used to. So bottom axis is years from 1970 to 2000. And men and women are taking in more calories on average. And now, the absolute numbers in terms of change, that should be about 300 calories. It got shifted, but it doesn't sound like a lot. But on a day-to-day basis, it really takes us, to gaining more weight. Now, you've heard this in the news. Our portion sizes have really gone up. A burger size in 1950 to now, tripling in size. French fries and the sodas. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we are all drinking these supersized sodas, but they're all contributing. Another thing is we're eating more on average, but we're probably eating poor quality foods. We, as Americans, are snacking more than we used to. So snacks in 1970, maybe 1. Now we're, doubling in the number of snacks we have per day. And the snacks seems to have more calories. They taste good, but they're probably nutritionally poor and calorie dense. Another interesting study in the recent couple years was looking at activity. I'm sure you've read in the news, we're eating more, we're less active. But the area that we're less active in is our workplace, actually. So, we're probably all not exercising as much as we should, and my patients hate that question. Oh, what's your exercise plan? But most of our time is spent at work, and we've really changed from, these goods-producing jobs like mining and construction to more service-oriented jobs, which are very sedentary. And in this particular study, the goods producing, like I mentioned, mining, construction, manufacturing, they encourage more moderate activity during the work hours, whereas now were much more sedentary in our workplace. And in this study, they felt that this could explain some of the change in our weight patterns. So on average, if you plot it from 1960 to 2010, we really decreased in the number of calories we utilize. So couple that with we're eating more, but we're on average expending less of our calories at work, and everything is moving towards the direction of us gaining weight. But I know a lot of you, that may not be a satisfying answer. Yes, we've heard about calories in and out. Stop with that. One thing that I found interesting in Dr. Spiegel's talk, if you were in that last session, is the importance of sleep. In the last decade or so, there's been a lot of research on getting inadequate or poor quality sleep. So just to give you an example, there was one study done taking normal weight, very young, like 20s, that's young for me, so 20, and they sleep deprived them for 5 days, just 5 hours, 5 days. And those young, normal weight kids gained weight, 1.8 pounds, just in those 5 days. And when they were allowed to choose their foods, they were more likely to eat things like carbohydrates, which are, bread, pasta, rice. And they were especially prone to eat after dinner, the snacking after dinner. When I talk to a lot of my patients, that's a particular troubled time period, after dinner, because that's the time you finished your work, or if you have children, it's sort of a rest time, but it's also a time where you're unwinding and you're more likely to overeat. The other thing that we probably aren't understanding a lot about is distracted eating. How many of you have eaten lunch while, working on the computer or trying to do work? What's interesting about distracted eating, just so another big example, is watching TV and eating. Because a lot of the research have focused on the meal at that time, and you do tend to eat a little bit more when you're distracted. But it seems to affect your meal, the subsequent meal, because you have less memory for that meal, and you're more likely to eat at the subsequent meal. So it's interesting. These are all our modern society times. We're eating more, we're less active, we have poor quality sleep, we're sleeping less, and we're distracted. Some of the things that I want to end with, these are maybe topics that you are really interested in. Who cares about eating a lot? Something else, it has to be. And you've heard a lot about high fructose corn syrup. And I can spend a whole lecture on each one of these topics. But basically, high fructose corn syrup, it has an unfortunate name, but it has fructose and glucose. Whenever you get high fructose corn syrup, you have fructose and glucose. That's the same as table sugar, which also has fructose and glucose. Now, in the science literature, the health consequences that people are worried about is having too much fructose. But you can get that in both table sugar and things that have high fructose corn syrup. And one of the items that have been particularly maligned are sugar-sweetened beverages. Now, I do believe that if we cut out sugar-sweetened beverages, we'd be better. It'd be better for our kids, it'd be better for us, and it will help you with weight loss. But it's not the only problem in our current society. So I'll just leave it at that for that. Now, another area that's very, very interesting, and it's having kind of growing science, is these things called endocrine disruptors. These are things in our environment that we didn't necessarily plan for that can affect our hormone actions in our body and cause disease. They can be included in pesticides, which I'm sure you've heard about in the news, or plastics. A really popular one is bisphenol A. And there are other things we don't understand, and some people really feel that those have really increased in our society and could be affecting how we store calories and our disease. And that's something more that I think is going to come to light in the future. Another thing, I hope this isn't shocking to you, but we harbor trillions of bacteria inside of us. So I hope I'm not breaking something that you didn't know before. But what's really interesting is The population of bacteria we have may differ between certain people. And in lean and obese people, they found that the population of bacteria actually differs. And we don't understand if that's the population that affects your weight or the weight affected the population. But there are definitely things in our society like overuse of antibiotics that can affect the gut, and the quality of foods we eat that can affect the bacterial population. There's a really interesting study showing that after gastric bypass, which is a surgical procedure for weight loss, that the gut population changes. And in rat studies, if you take that population and put it into an obese mice, that they get leaner without having the surgery. But these are in animal studies, and I think it's going to take years for this to develop. And so far, I'm not selling bacteria for consumption yet. And then maybe I won't say too much about gluten. I'm not sure of, did I have? So there is definitely a disease called celiac disease where people have an intolerance to gluten. Now, those people get very sick when they have gluten, but gluten has become really popularized, so there is a term non-celiac gluten intolerance. I think scientifically we don't understand a lot about that. Okay, but I will tell you that if you feel better off of gluten, fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think in the past, there was very few options for people who are gluten intolerant. So if you went off of gluten, you would lose weight because you would not have breads or pasta. But now there are so many gluten-free options that alone is not going to help you lose weight. And then I know. And then Dr. Gardner is going to say something about insulin resistance, but I just wanted to touch and say that I do a lot of research in that area, and there's a lot of misinformation about that. So, we have very limited time, but I wanted to convey to you that really in our modern society, it's the perfect storm to gain weight. We have a genetic predisposition. We have an environment that really encourages it. So I know this is a little anticlimactic, but I was glad to hear Dr. Spiegel say how exercise really helped in terms of cancer survivorship. And you have to fight against gaining weight. In our society, you really have to fight against gaining weight. And you have to plan for exercise. And I just wanted to show you, even in the twin studies, what they found that was powerful, that separated twins who were heavier versus leaner, was their physical activity at age 16. At age 16, the twins that were different in the weight, they had the same BMI at age 16, but it started to widen. And what they found was differences in physical activity, even in these identical twins. So you can overcome some of your genetics and environment, but you have to plan for exercise. I know we're all busy, but you have to plan for it. And then Dr. Gardner is going to say a lot about how we eat, but you really have to be conscious about how much and what you eat. So thank you. We'll take questions while I set up. Oh, you want to take?
Well, you can while I set up.
I can take a few questions. I feel like Dr. Oz today. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, there's a non-adapter.
Or we can wait for, yes?
Thanks. Oh, I didn't realize you had so many.
Oh, did you come hear him speak at, yeah. Oh, she wanted to know what I thought about Gary Taub. And actually, Dr. Gardner had a one-on-one with him. And he talks about, why we're fat. Is that the one
Thank you so much.
You read? I don't really agree with a lot of what he says, but if it resonates with you and works with you, I think a lot about your weight, if it resonates with you, no one can really take that away. We haven't studied every single thing, but I think there's a lot of holes. But if it resonates with you and it works for you, I think it's okay.
Thanks. Hey, I'll start with that one.
Okay.
Actually, so the problem is he's dismissing the low-fat hypothesis because of all the problems. And he says low carb is the answer. And it has the same flaws. And I'll show you some data that say they're both right and they're both wrong. That's what I'm here to tell you. All right? So in 1998, we came up with this consensus about what everybody should eat to lose weight. And it was low fat. We've been saying it for 3 decades. It's been a public health mantra. And Sun only showed you a few of these, to one of these slides. So I'll show you. I didn't think, oh, no, wait, this is the wrong slide. Uh-oh. Oh, wait. What did I just do? Battle of the diets. Oh, this is, wait. Okay, oh my God, I opened the wrong file. That's so embarrassing. Okay, give me 1 sec. Well, I give this lecture a lot, so that's just the wrong version. This is the TED Talk version. That one was an hour. They didn't give me an hour, so I better start with this one. Whew, good thing I switched. That one had way too many slides. Okay, I'm back on track. And I forgot, I want to acknowledge all these fabulous people, and Jennifer is in the audience somewhere. I saw her. One of the Jennifers. So let's go on. That's what they recommended. And here's, that was in 1998. So they have this for every year. And Sun was trying to show you just sort of the beginning and the end. But wait till 1998 comes up, right? Because in 1998, they decided low fat was the best way. And they told us so. So it should stop right there. Something didn't stop. 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 Is anybody from Colorado? You want to go there? Yeah. It's gone. Last year it left. Sorry. All right. So low fat didn't work, and a lot of people said, I know why it didn't work. My diet is better. How many of you know someone who has one of these books at home? Not you, obviously, but how many of you know someone who has one of these books? Good. They're really popular books, but it's crazy because some are super low fat and some are super low carb and some are all over the place. So we would like to resolve that for you, but it is harder than you think. One of the reasons being a lot of these are fad diets. It takes a long time to do these studies, and if when you're done it's gone out of fashion, what would be the point in studying it? But the whole low carb, low fat craze thing was there for a while. So I want to cover that in as much as I'm going to tell you that we had a bunch of studies in the last decade. And if you'd asked me 5 years ago to give this talk, I would have cited a lot of these, but I don't have to anymore. These are smaller, shorter studies with higher dropouts. And now we have a couple bigger studies, and I'm going to use those to summarize where we're at. There's a big study in Israel that lasted for 2 years and 300 people, and in the end, low fat lost, and low carb won, and the Mediterranean diet won. So I'm not really going to get into that right now. So I want to focus on how low fat won, but I want your eyes to wander to the left side and see how much weight they lost. They lost like 3, 4, 5 kilos. They really wanted to lose way more than that, okay? This is the pounds lost study, super famous, 800 people, 4 different diets. If I had more time, I would go into the details of their 2 fat contents, low and high, 2 protein, low and high, 4 carbohydrate levels. They were testing low and high carb, fat, and protein all at the same time. And you can see the massive difference it made. See, so they said it doesn't make any difference at all. So what you really have to do is you have to lower calories. So forget about everything else, just lower calories. But haven't we been saying that also for 3 decades? Just eat less? And that doesn't work? So I have a problem with that. If you look harder at these data, they had a very challenging time eating the goals that they set for them. They were not huge goals, but they were percents. And none of us, I'm not even good at hitting a percent. So actually, the diets are more similar than different. So they all lost the same amount of weight because they were basically all on the same diet. So that really made a lot more sense if you looked at it. So we did a study where we used popular diet books as a way to get people to do low fat and low carb. And by luck, we chose 2 that were super extreme, the Atkins and Ornish. And I can tell you the people following Atkins didn't follow it religiously. So they were higher in carb than Atkins wanted. And the people who were following Ornish were higher in fat than Ornish wanted. He wanted super low fat. But their goal was this, and when they fell short, they were still this. So the Atkins and Ornish groups were different. Now, of the 4 diets we looked at, Atkins was the lowest carb, and Zone was the second lowest carb. So if it was really all about carbs, it would have gone Atkins was the most and then Zone, and that's not the way it worked. Zone, in fact, had the least weight loss. My hypothesis, it was the most complicated to read. Atkins was don't eat carbs. Ornish was don't eat fat. Zone was, blocks and balance and 30, 40, 30, and that was harder, okay? But also let your eyes wander to the left. I forgot to say that last slide. And our women didn't lose much weight either. This is 311 women who have 15 to 100 pounds to lose, and on average, they lost 3, 4, 5, or 10 pounds. So on average, that was hugely disappointing. But low fat didn't win. After 3 decades and dozens of trials now, some of them big, and as long as we could run them, low fat did not win. So my quick conclusion for this part is that low fat doesn't win. Low carb is always just as effective or more effective, but there's a lot of flaws here. Low carb is also high protein and high fat. The average weight loss is really pitiful, actually. The long-term adherence is poor, so it's hard to see what we're testing. They're way too short. We should be doing 10, 20-year studies, but we don't get funded to do 10 or 20 studies. I have to get promoted. To get promoted, I have to publish. I can't wait for 10 or 20 years. So sorry, it's very selfish of me, but I can't do studies that long. And there's really just many inherent challenges in this. So I wish we had better answers for you. But I'm going to dig a little deeper into some of our data and tell you the story and the journey that we've been on lately. So even though that's my overall set of guidelines or conclusions for the first point, my favorite data slide of our study is this one, where I've represented every single woman as one bar on all the 4 diets. And so now you see the distribution of actual results, not the average. And I hope what you see is that on all 4 diets, women lost 20, 25, and 30 kilos. Some of them did. And some of them gained 5 and 10 kilos on a weight loss study. Now, have some sympathy here. They lost jobs, they got divorced, 2 of them lost their daughters in the course of this study. So life happened and got in their way. So I find what's much more fascinating is the 30 kilos or 60 pounds of range within each diet. I think that's way more interesting than the few pounds average difference, and I think we could tease that apart. And not many people publish that way, but Will Yancey did. He published all of his data in this graphic. The red bars are the average, but the tiny little squiggly lines are individuals. Look how different responses we get on the same diet. And this is somebody who mimicked our study to some extent. They had Atkins and Ornish and Zone. And the red bar is the average. But look at the circles and the triangles and the diamonds. There's a huge range of response. So maybe a better question is which diet is better for who, instead of just randomly assigning people here and there. So as Sun suggested, we think insulin resistance is one of these pieces. So I found this study in the literature. There's only 21 people in this study, really tiny study with 4, 5, 6 in a group. It's because they fed them all their food for 4 months. Every bit that they ate, they fed them, and they tightly controlled it. And they assigned them to low fat and low carb, but before they did it, they figured out who was the most and least insulin resistant, which I'll define a couple ways, but only briefly because we don't have much time. And what they found is if they divided them up first and then randomly assigned them, the people who are more I can't remember if they're women and men. What's this one? Women. The women who were more insulin sensitive lost more weight on low fat, and the women who are more insulin resistant lost more weight on low carb. Now, help me with a little math here. Take the 2 yellow bars and average them in your head. Take the 2 white bars and average them in your head. What's the difference between low carb and low fat overall? Nothing. What's happened if you tease it apart a little? So maybe what we need to do is help you figure out if some of you should be on one kind of diet versus another, and that's the kind of thing that we're after. Here's another group that did virtually the same thing. They found a different way to separate their folks into insulin resistant and sensitive, but in the same way, they assigned them to a low glycemic load and a high glycemic load, which really translates into low fat versus low carb, and they found virtually the same thing. We went back to our old study and said, these guys only have 4, 5, or 6, or 8 in a group. We could do this with 20 or 30. So we took all our Atkins women and all our Ornish women, and we had a really crude measure. We had fasting insulin level, which is not a great measure of this, but we broke them into tertiles, and in the top was the group that had the lowest tertile of fasting insulin, and we called those the more insulin sensitive. And in the bottom, they had the highest fasting insulin. We're calling that the more insulin resistant. And so up top, between those assigned to Atkins and assigned to Ornish, I have to say that because they didn't follow them exactly, but they were assigned to those, and they really did eat differently. They're actually really similar. In the other group study, they're more different than this. But if you just do the insulin-sensitive ones, they're more similar. It's really the more insulin-resistant women that are more different. And the ones who do the worst are the ones who are assigned to Ornish, who fall short of the low-fat goals. They basically fall smack dab into the national guidelines for low-fat. And they really are hugely unsuccessful with weight loss on average, and statistically significantly worse than the ones who are insulin resistant assigned to Atkins. So I'm a little worried now about our national mantra of low fat for 3 decades, because as weight goes up, insulin resistance goes up. So we've been telling a greater and greater proportion of America to be on the wrong diet. That would be kind of sad. So we used this study, these data, to get another study funded. This is the avocado folks who were in the audience one day when they heard me say this, and someone in the audience says, "Oh my gosh, gasp, are you saying some people should really be on low carb for weight loss? Wouldn't that be high fat? What would that be?" And to defend myself, I said, "Well, that should be avocados, nuts, and seeds." And so the next day I got a call from the avocado board, and they said, "What would you do if I gave you $500,000? I said, "I would do that insulin resistance study." Do you think you could show that people could lose weight while eating avocados? I said, "I'm almost sure of it." So the check arrived later that week. And we created a whole new study where we focused a lot more on how we were dividing them up as insulin resistant and sensitive. And we actually worked a lot more on the diet. And our hypothesis was that there would be this differential effect. It wouldn't be the same effect. And our whole team worked on this. And what I'm super proud of, and I don't have time to share with you because there's not much time for this whole talk, is that we focused a lot on quality. And this slide, I hope, captures it. So on the left, in yellow, they're getting wheat berries and whole grain pasta and lots of fruit and skim milk and organic. And on the right, they're getting pasture-raised eggs and organic avocados and grass-fed beef. And in the middle, the reason it's green is because everybody has to eat their foundation vegetables. Everybody has to have a salad every day. One group's salad, they squeeze lemon and balsamic vinegar on it, and the other group has a salad, but they put nuts and seeds and avocados and real salad dressing on it. So one is a really high-fat diet salad, and one is a really low-fat salad. But everybody gets their foundation vegetables every day, and the focus is on quality. And we actually pushed them really hard to 20 grams of carb or 20 grams of fat a day, and then told them after you hit that, you can backtrack a little and titrate to the place that serves you well. And these folks ate really different diets, and I don't have time to show you the data. But we replicated what we did before. So now this is the 4th time we've seen this, that if you're insulin resistant, you do better on a low-carb diet. The average, if you go and look at the y-axis here, the average weight loss is 20 pounds at 6 months. So we've also increased the amount of weight loss by focusing on a better quality diet and some other things I'll mention later. We also included mindless eating and food addictions and other things that we built on top of the diet, and physical activity for everyone. So I think piling that all on made the overall weight loss higher. Just like before, we had a huge range of weight loss. This is the range on one group. And up at the top, this is a cool part of the study, 6 people dropped out of each group. So we didn't have one crappy diet and one good diet, which is what a lot of my colleagues do. They have a favorite. So they make this super good diet and then the straw man to knock over, or the straw woman in this case. But we made 2 really good diets, and we got the same range, but there was the same amount of satisfaction on both. 6 dropped out of both groups. So this is the other group. So part of what our results are suggesting is some of the participants on that side were on the wrong diet, and some of the ones on this side were on the right diet. And then we switched them, which is crazy. Nobody ever does this, but we let them switch to see what the other diet is. And it's too small to be definitive about this, but I'll share 2 anecdotal stories with you. Because one of the issues could be here that maybe you lost a lot of weight just because you're really good at following directions, and you didn't lose a lot of weight because your life got messed up and got in the way. But we want to try everybody on both diets to see what they thought. So one woman who was on low carb and went from a size 18 dress to a 4, switched. Virtually everybody, I didn't even think they'd do this, but they all agreed to switch. And 3 or 4 weeks in, she said, "I can't do this diet anymore. I'm back up to like a size 8 dress. I refuse to buy new clothes again. I just gave them all away, and I'm in a smaller dress. I refuse to be on the other diet. It doesn't work." Whereas We had a guy who got assigned to low fat who really didn't want it. He really wanted the low carb. Got low fat. He lost 60 pounds. Then he moved over to low carb. He did that for 6 months. And when he went back to low, when he was finished the whole thing, he went back to low fat. His whole family's practically vegan at this point, driven by his huge success. He liked the low fat better. So the issue here is we got to figure out how to help you figure out which diets. And these aren't the only two, but I think this is the disservice that we've been doing to people, is looking for the diet, the magic diet. And there isn't one. There's lots of different ways to do this. I do think it's sad that as we're getting more and more and more overweight, and more people are insulin resistant, there's still this knee-jerk reaction that low fat is the best way. It's actually a really hard message to kill. So if you're interested in how to figure out if you're insulin resistant or insulin sensitive, here's a couple of clinical clues. None of them are perfect. There isn't any perfect test. It's either a high or low fasting insulin with no known cut point. It's either a high or low triglyceride over HDL ratio, which more people know than their insulin, because insulin's not really a clinical value, it's more of a research value. There's qualifying and meeting the criteria of the metabolic syndrome, which is often the underlying issue is the insulin resistance. Or the oral glucose tolerance test that we did, but there's no cut point for that, so we don't know. So I'm going to finish on this last point where sugar is the new fat, literally. Here's some trend data. If you look over the last 30 or 40 years, Americans have been eating more and more calories. And after that long, low-fat message, we've been eating a smaller proportion of calories from fat. That's only because our total calories have been going up. It's the same amount of fat. We've been eating more and more carbs. And half of the more carbs that we've been eating have been coming from sugar-added beverages. And it's not just Coke. It's Arizona tea and Rockstar and Gatorade and sports drinks. And this, low-fat yogurt. Now look at this. Wouldn't you feel great if you talked to your physician and just feel warm and fuzzy if you said you had that for breakfast? But on the one side is the plain, and the other side is the raspberry. And the raspberry doesn't just have 3 ingredients plus raspberries. It has added sugar before it actually has raspberries. And the take-home point here is, calorie-wise, the one on the right has almost 50% more calories. They took out the fat, and they put in more sugar. So we've been adding sugar to everything. So for this average overweight, obese individual selected at random, low fat and low carb don't really make a difference if you're only looking on average. But if we get a more tailored approach, we should be way more open-minded to that low carb idea that's been vilified for a long time. I would like there to be a lot of focus on the quality of the carbs, which I will finish with on my last slide. The national trend is the carbs that have been going up have been crappy carbs. It's been sugar. Low fat was replaced with sugar. And I don't think that's new to any of you. I hope we have more information, because we just got a big NIH study funded, and we got some philanthropy coming in to augment it. We're going to look at genotype and insulin resistance and your food environment and food addictions and the microbiome that she just talked about. I was in a conference yesterday in Seattle. I sat down with Justin Sonnenberg, and we are going to take fecal samples of our participants. We may even do fecal transplants at the end, but I don't want to gross you out too much right now, because this is the end I'll note on. The note I'll end on. Sorry, that was backwards. I think I need more sleep. The sleep thing is important, and I do not get enough sleep. Whether it's low carb or high carb, we're eating the wrong kind of carbs. If we had a food pyramid, I wish it would look like this. So sugar's the easy one to get rid of, but carbs are really complicated. So if you want to ask any questions, I don't know how much time we have. I think we're actually out, sorry. White bread and whole wheat bread, yeah, it's not really that different. If you're talking carbs, I'm not even talking about bread or bagels or whole wheat. I'm talking vegetables and beans. And then maybe I'm talking about steel-cut oats and wheat berries. And then maybe some fruits. And then maybe I'm talking about pasta and rice. But really, I feel like we quibble at the top with white bread and whole wheat bread and white bagels and whole wheat bagels. And we need to be working on the bottom. That's where the quality carbs are. So whichever carbs you get, high or low, they should be on the bottom. Thanks for your attention. Now, I want to know who's the boss who's going to pull the hook on me, because I think we're supposed to be done and you go to the next thing. Nobody's pulling the hook, so Do you want to come back up, son, in case you get questions? You were first, actually. So I don't have meat or dairy on here because meat or dairy don't have carbs. Well, the dairy does, you're right. So it has lactose in it. Meat has no carbs. This is just a carb pyramid. I feel like carbs in and of themselves are confusing. I'm not sure I would put the dairy in there. No meat has any carbohydrate. It's really just a carb pyramid. Say it again. Where does what fit? Granola. Granola? Quinoa. Yeah, it's a whole grain. Yeah, I don't know quite where it fits yet. It's a good question. Uh-huh. Would you like to address weight gain after weight loss? Oh, weight gain after weight loss is way harder than weight loss. Yes, that is our biggest challenge. We have some investigators working on that right now. Michaela Kiernan does a really clever thing where her study actually taught weight stability first and then weight loss, and compared it to people who just went straight to weight loss. And when they compared it out front, learning the skills of weight stability help them maintain their weight loss afterward. And if it's just an afterthought, it comes right back on. But the go ahead. As well has been consistently shown to help. So I don't think your mic is on, so let me repeat that. So maintaining the exercise is probably more important for weight loss maintenance than it is for weight loss. But another big problem there is when people go on a diet and off a diet. If you go on a diet and lose weight, and then you go off a diet and you're surprised that it came back on, well, that was a huge problem. Because what you have to do is you have to go on the diet you're going to have for the rest of your life. And if that's not your approach, it will come back on for sure. And Sun has more.
I just wanted you to tell them, on your diet for the low carb, it was 20 grams. If you can just kind of give an example of 20 grams, and if you think that that's sustainable for a long time.
No, you didn't understand. So the 20 grams is an intermediate approach. They just go there and then they titrate back up. So they go back up to 25% of calories from carbs, but that's just to realize they can go lower than they think. 20 grams of carbs is not sustainable. That is not a healthy diet for life. If you were confused by that, I'm glad you asked that question. Nobody's kicking me off of here, so I'm just going to stay. So we just wrote a position paper from the American Heart Association. It got published a year ago, and basically the main conclusion is we need more data. But other than needing more data, if I had to give you a statement today, for most people, the artificial sweeteners backfire and they compensate later in the day and they completely nullify the effect. And some of it's subconscious and some of it's conscious. They pat themselves in the back. I had a Diet Coke, awesome, so tonight I get chocolate cake that I wasn't going to have. But some of it's actually subconscious and physiologically explicable that way. But it's complicated. So the people who use them consciously, intentionally, and don't compensate, it works. But most people seem to be using them unconsciously, and it doesn't work that way. Way in the back. Are there differences between those who are obese for weight loss and just moderately overweight? I don't think I can address that here. That would take a professional like Sun. Maybe she can address it.
No, I think, right. So I think for a medical recommendation, it'd be good to first check with your doctor and to see if you have complications associated with obesity and make really tailored goals. What we know from studies is that a 10% change in your weight does have a significant impact on your health. A lot of times you may want, a lot more than that, but a 10% does make a significant impact. We say smaller increments that you can achieve, but when you think high, sometimes those people can do better, but there's no set goal for every single person.
Right here?
Is there a place for the newly approved diet drugs in serious law?
Right. So,
you can address drugs.
Okay, so I work with patients with weight loss, and there have been 2 drugs approved for weight loss, and one is available, but there are some others. One's called Kisima, and I think there is a place because, as I said, it's hard in our society to lose weight, and sometimes it's okay to get help. They're mostly focused on appetite suppressants, but I think the core really is what Dr. Gardner said, to really change our lifestyle. We're in it for the long haul, but I realize that people struggle, and there are things that can help them. But I will say insurance still doesn't cover those drugs. Yes?
It seems that the
You could try both diets and see which one worked better.
But I want to say, to be fair, if you go back to your slide, in both groups, he had tremendous success in people losing weight.
Which slide?
You know, there was a difference in that 2 group. You know, where you have the 2 bars in your study. Even the people who even the yellow person on the insulin-resistant low-fat, I mean, they're still 7%. And I will tell you, diet drugs, you only need to lose 5% to even get approved long-term. So he had great success in both. And I think, like you said, try both and see what resonates with you. I would say most people today are predisposed to more insulin-resistant phenotype. But if you see your doctor, there's some clues to tell you you're more insulin than not. If you have diabetes, you're insulin resistant. If you have prediabetes, you are. If you have high triglycerides, you're more likely insulin resistant.
If I can add to that, my bigger worry actually is the people who go on a low-carb, high-fat diet, they do things, or low-fat, high-carb, they do it wrong. They don't do a nutritionally sound diet. So I can make you a really poor low-carb diet and a really healthy one. I can make you a really poor low-fat diet. I can make you a really healthy one. And I don't think that gets addressed as much as it should. So just saying low-carb, how low, what kind? You could easily give somebody these directions and it wouldn't work. And they'd say, it doesn't work for me. But they didn't really do it in a quality, thoughtful way. So you might have to work with a nutritionist to get it right. How about one here and one there, and let's wrap it up.
Studies done about drugs like
What
drugs causing weight gain. Plenty of drugs.
Yeah, a lot of drugs have been associated with gain, especially drugs that target your central nervous system, your nerves. And I think kind of what the message was with cancer drugs, we're saying, it controls your pain, so don't worry about that. But we should worry about it, and we should be more thoughtful. But sometimes if that's the only drug that can help this other very important problem, we're stuck. But I think we need to pay more attention to that. It is a reality. Your blood pressure medicines, it's a reality. It can make you more hungry, usually.
One more. I had one more back here, maybe. Yeah, you get to be it. I hope it's one we can answer. So you just successfully lost a lot of weight, and you're worried about the food cues driving you back the other way. You should be worried. And now, actually, our bigger goal and challenge is to change social norms and get some policy. When smoking and things like that and seatbelts happened, it was policies. So it really needs to be a combination. And so if we're not supporting you in that way, we're not giving you the service you need. But the reality is the food cues are out there and everywhere. So that's another you can't just overcome that with a low-carb, low-fat diet if you're insulin-resistant or sensitive. Sorry, way to give us a horrible question to end on. But thank you for listening.